China is using the New Zealand Massacre to justify mass surveillance of Muslims in China. Are you really surprised? This is China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. The March 15th massacre at a mosque in Christchurch, New Zealand shocked the world. A lone gunman killed 50 Muslims.
This is and will be one of New Zealand's darkest days.
Now, we can all agree it was a dark day for New Zealand, but no country was hurt more by this senseless massacre than China. That's because the Chinese Communist Party deeply loves all Muslims. You can tell by how they treat some of the Muslims under their own rule, the ethnic Uighurs in the Xinjiang Uighur Autonomous Region. The Chinese regime has installed a mass surveillance system unlike anything the world has ever seen.
The security here is incredibly tight. There are armored cars on the street, police stations on every corner, and tons of surveillance cameras.
In the past year, police have stepped up security. The region is now under what's probably the most intense government surveillance in the world.
Wow, the Communist Party is really sparing no effort to keep the Uighurs safe. And the New Zealand massacre is an important reminder as to why. At least according to the Xinjiang government, why, they've even sent a fax to the Wall Street Journal saying just that. The fax said, "The recent mass shooting in New Zealand that harmed so many innocent lives is a strong warning. The goal of improving security at mosques is to protect the ability of the Muslim community to hold normal, orderly religious activities." Yes, the Chinese regime is using the New Zealand massacre to justify its mass surveillance of Muslims. And don't forget, according to my favorite Chinese state-run media, the Global Times, it's a model worth copying. The Xinjiang government felt they needed to straighten things out with the Wall Street Journal and their facts. Yes, the country with the world's most advanced surveillance system wants you to know it still relies on the world's least advanced communication system. A few weeks ago, the Wall Street Journal published this article. And they showed this satellite footage of a Uyghur neighborhood being razed to the ground. But the Chinese facts clarified this argument that shantytown redevelopment is intended to force some Uyghur migrants to leave the city and place others in residential buildings that are easier to monitor is a slanderous fabrication. Again, the surveillance is for their safety. Why is it so hard for people in the West to understand that to keep you safe, it's necessary for the government to monitor you at all times? Otherwise, how will they know if you're being threatened by dangerous beliefs, like a belief in a higher power? Other than the Communist Party, of course. And safety is also why Chinese authorities are working hard to bring that kind of surveillance to the rest of China. It will make for a more trusting society. Don't agree? Well, denouncing the Chinese system from a Western point of view is tantamount to a neo-imperialistic attitude. The facts to the Wall Street Journal also criticized the paper for lying about so-called internment camps in Xinjiang.
According to the UN, authorities are detaining as many as 1 million Uyghurs in facilities like the one we saw in Urumqi. Satellite images and construction bid documents show how China's government built these camps at a frenetic pace over the past 2 years.
God, those no good satellites. Don't worry, I don't think they'll be a problem for long. Also, those so-called internment camps are actually just job training centers that also combat extremist thinking with job training. And that's why the people in those training centers are so happy. So what do you think of China using the New Zealand massacre to justify mass surveillance of Muslims in Xinjiang? Tell me what you think in the comments below. And now, it's time for me to answer a question from one of you, a fan who supports China Uncensored with $1 or more per episode by contributing through Patreon. Rabbit L. Benkei asks, Chris, what country would you say China is most effectively influencing? That's a hard question to answer. There is barely a country on earth that the Communist Party isn't influencing. That was something I really realized after I went to the Oslo Freedom Forum in 2018. It's a big human rights conference where activists from around the world talk about their struggles with authoritarian regimes. And it seemed like no matter which country they come from, the Chinese Communist Party was somehow working there behind the scenes. It's not just authoritarian countries either. Western liberal democracies like the United States are also being heavily influenced. China has tremendous sway over Hollywood. American politicians have been influenced and bought off. Got a 401k or mutual funds? Odds are some of your money is invested in China. And with China setting its sights on the moon and Mars, it may be trying to influence other planets. But which country is the Chinese regime influencing the most? I'd say Taiwan. They've tried to interfere with Taiwan's elections. They pump money into Taiwan to influence politicians and business leaders. And they force the government to spend enormous resources preparing for a Chinese military invasion of their island. On the other hand, maybe Taiwan isn't the country most influenced, since according to the Chinese regime, Taiwan's not a country. It's been a province of China since ancient times. Thanks for your question, Rabbit. And thanks to all my 50 Cent Army soldiers who support China Uncensored. It's only because of your support that we've been able to cover topics like this that most other media don't want to. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.